Now part of the Darkcast network. Welcome to Indie Podcasts with a dark side. At around 6:30 p.m. on Monday, January 30th, 2023, Lauren E. Maloberti walked into AHN Hempfield Neighborhood Hospital in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, carrying her unresponsive 5-year-old adopted son, Landon Maloberti, over her shoulder. It was literally reported that Landon had been, quote, slung over her shoulder when she brought him inside. Landon couldn't breathe on his own, but hospital employees said Lauren and her husband, Jacob N. Maloberti, showed no urgency, even though their son was in critical condition. The couple told hospital staff that Landon had been wobbly from COVID a month prior. Lauren also said that he had slipped and fallen the previous morning, but seemed like he was fine afterwards. However, if that fall caused his condition, Lauren and Jacob had waited more than a day before getting him medical help. Doctors actually said that they should have called 911 immediately instead of waiting while his condition got worse. Also, remember that I said that his name was Landon Maloberti. Well, when Lauren brought him into the hospital, she actually gave hospital staff Landon's name as Landon Ellenberger, which was the last name that he had used before she adopted him. Then, while doctors and nurses were trying to save him, she was overheard worrying that people would blame her for his injuries. Landon was quickly transferred to UPMC Children's Hospital, where doctors realized that his condition couldn't be explained by COVID or a simple fall. He had suffered 3 separate brain bleeds, and his brain had shifted inside of his skull. Shifted is the word that they used. One medical description even said that his brain had been, quote, obliterated. Doctors also found rotational head trauma that was consistent with severe physical abuse. Landon's body was also covered in bruises, and doctors found more than 100 injuries in different stages of healing across his head, face, neck, arms, legs, back, abdomen, and torso. One bruise was shaped like fingers gripping him beneath his armpit. The injuries had caused Landon substantial pain and left him unable to stand, eat, drink, and breathe on his own, or even to remain conscious. Welcome, lambs. Welcome to Love and Murder, Heartbreak to Homicide. Today's case is about a little boy who was adopted into what should have been his forever home, only to endure years of abuse before doctors described his injuries as consistent with torture. So as you can tell, this case has severe child abuse, so listener discretion is advised. Before we jump back in, don't forget to subscribe to Love and Murder on whatever platform you're listening on. The best way to subscribe is by joining the Patreon, which you could do for free, patreon.com/Love and Murder. But if you like victim-centered true crime, exclusive bonus episodes, ad-free listening, intro-free listening, and get in certain cases before the public gets it, then go ahead and join the Patreon as part of the Lamb Fam using any one of the paid tiers. Patreon.com/Love and Murder. It is the best way to support the show while getting even more cases that you won't be able to hear anywhere else, while getting even more cases from me. And now, let's get back to this case of the murder of Landon Maloberti. Landon was born in 2017 to one of Lauren's cousins. Now, before Lauren had taken him into her home when he was only 2 months old, he had already been mistreated by other caregivers. 2 years later, in 2019, she officially adopted him. Landon was described as a happy little boy who loved playing with monster trucks, eating pickles, and singing country music at the top of his lungs. Then, in 2021, Lauren married her high school sweetheart, Jacob, who worked as a corrections officer at Fayette State Correctional Center. Together, they raised 6 children in their home in Delmont. However, people who spent time around the family said Lauren didn't treat Landon with the same love and patience that she showed the other children. Jacob's mother, Tammy Kemmerer, described Lauren as a good mother to Caden, Bella, and Lily, but said her behavior towards Landon was noticeably different. Quote, "She was an amazing mother to Caden, Bella, and Lily, and she was loving towards the other kids, but just not Landon." Tammy also said Lauren claimed that Landon hated her and made her feel like a battered spouse. Landon made you feel like a battered spouse? The adopted little boy made you feel like a battered spouse? Lauren's former coworkers gave similar accounts of the way she talked about him, saying that she openly said she, quote, hated Landon and described him as, quote, hard to love and a constant struggle. Lauren's sister-in-law, Erica Delascio, said Lauren initially appeared to be loving and caring towards Landon. However, as time passed, she became increasingly impatient with him and often complained that he was misbehaved and didn't show her enough affection. He didn't show her? The baby didn't show the adult enough affection? Are you serious, right? See, I couldn't be her coworker. I couldn't because, I couldn't. Anyways, Landon's biological grandmother, Kathy Scheffler, said that she didn't notice any signs that he was being mistreated until April 2022. That was when Lauren stopped allowing her to see him and told her that Landon was bad. I would have called 911 immediately. Welfare check. After that, Kathy was completely cut off from her grandson. Around the same time, the messages exchanged between Lauren and Jacob became increasingly disturbing. Investigators later found texts dating from April 2022 until Landon's death that were described as being, quote, full of disdain for him. Then in July 2022, Lauren sent Jacob a message that said, quote, "I just got done beating your son." And in another message, she said that she was, quote, "going to kill him." The 5 other children in the home also described how differently Landon was treated. According to them, he was the only child who was regularly hit or disciplined. One sibling, identified as KD, said Lauren hit Landon because, quote, "he does not learn his lesson." The children said that Lauren would strike him with either her open hand or a wooden spoon. As Landon cried, she would sometimes get more angry and continue hitting him. During these beatings, the other children were often sent upstairs, but they could still hear Landon crying from the other room. How heartbreaking. They also said that Lauren sprayed him with liquid from a spray bottle, forced him to drink from a toilet, and denied him food until he had to search through the kitchen after bedtime because he was hungry. Landon was frequently kept away from the other children and isolated from relatives, neighbors, and school. During family visits in late 2022, relatives noticed that he was often made to sit alone on a couch in the corner of the living room rather than spending time with everyone else. Pause here. You know what really grinds my gears? The part that I have a very, very hard time understanding, and I already know my longtime lambs know where I'm going with this. So people noticed that Lauren treated Landon differently and saw him separated from everyone else, saw him sitting in the corner alone during their visits. Kathy was cut off from seeing him, and other people even heard Lauren say that she hated him and found him hard to love or all this crap, right? Now, I don't know what, if anything, any of those people reported or how much they truly understood about what was happening inside the home. However, When an adult suddenly prevents a child's family from seeing him, constantly talks negative about him, and openly treats him differently from every other child in the house, those are signs. Like, you're getting beat in the face with these signs. Like, the signs are being written on your face that something isn't right. It's literally in your eyeballs. I just don't understand how so many people can notice pieces of a problem without anyone putting those pieces together. You don't even have to call CPS. You know what I'm saying? You can literally call the police for a welfare check, or maybe do call CPS for a welfare check, but sound the alarm. Maybe record. Look at him over there sitting by himself. He's not allowed to come sit by us. And then show this to the police. Because if the police go over there, it's going to be, hunky-dory unicorns and rainbows. Oh, no, he's good, officer. Look, he's right here. He's good. So maybe record what's happening and show it to police. Show it to CPS. You know what I'm saying? But to just sit there and see it and just be like, oh, yeah. Oh, it's tragic how he was killed. We did remember seeing him sitting alone on the couch every single time we came to the house. And I do actually recall her saying that she hated his guts and that he didn't show her enough affection and she was planning on killing him. But I thought she was just playing. I don't understand people like that. Maybe you didn't know the full extent of the abuse. You know what I'm saying? But you saw bits and pieces. And this little boy was only 5 years old. It's not like he could have left the house himself. It's not like he could have found help on his own. He needed an adult. Somebody to ask what was going on. Record. Bring it to the parents' face. What are you doing to this little boy? Look, this is how I saw him last week or whatever. Something. See the signs, see the abuse, does absolutely nothing about it. Literally, I've heard this quote. I saw what was happening at that house and decided never to visit again. I have heard somebody say that. And personally, I will never forgive anyone who leaves a child to get abused because, it makes them, if I don't see it, out of sight, out of mind, never forgive. I don't care who you are. Anyways, off my soapbox, back to the episode. At night, Landon was forced to sleep on the living room floor while Lauren and Jacob watched him through a monitoring camera. By then, nearly every part of his life inside the home was being controlled. He was separated from other people, singled out for punishment, denied food, and constantly watched. Then came the final weekend of January 2023. Lauren claimed that Landon slipped and fell on the morning of January 29th. She said that he laid there for some time before eventually getting back up and appeared to be fine. When she later told Erica what happened, Erica didn't think that explanation made sense. Quote, she said that after he slipped and fell, he laid there for a while, then got up and was fine. I personally was expecting more. Just a slip and fall isn't enough for a child not to wake up. Right, but then did you ask her if she took him to the doctor? And if she said no, did you make any steps past that? By Tuesday, January 31st, doctors determined that Landon had no brain activity and listed their findings as being, quote, diagnostic of torture. While he remained on life support, medical professionals called 911 and raised concerns about Landon's condition, the couple's behavior, and the explanation they gave for his injuries. Investigators with the Delmont Police Department and Westmoreland County detectives interviewed hospital employees, medical professionals, and members of the family before searching Lauren and Jacob's home. Inside, detectives found towels and clothing that were, quote, still damp with vomit. They believed Lauren and Jacob had used those items to clean Landon's unconscious body before bringing him to the hospital. What pieces of utter trash. Investigators also noticed that the camera used to watch Landon while he slept on the living room floor had been conveniently ripped from the wall. They believed that Jacob had removed the camera while Landon was in the hospital, and officers at that time were busy conducting interviews. So basically, Landon's in the hospital, police are investigating. Jacob haul-tailed to the house, ripped out the camera, haul-tailed back to the hospital to pretend like he was grieving. Then on Wednesday, February 1st, while Landon remained on life support, Lauren and Jacob created a GoFundMe campaign. The page was initially made to help the couple pay for legal representation after Child Protective Services removed the other children from their custody. Lauren wrote, quote, "As we were in the hospital, CPS took away our parental rights pending the investigation. We both need good attorneys. My kids are my world. Help us fight. I can't live without our kids." She then described Landon's condition as a sudden tragedy that had happened to the family. Quote, "Tragedy struck our family when our precious baby boy went unresponsive. I rushed him to the ER and they intubated him, and he's been unresponsive ever since." In another update, Lauren wrote, quote, "I'm devastated. We are devastated. My kids are my world. I can't live without our kids. I'm already losing my boy." As Landon's condition continued getting worse, the fundraiser was updated to include funeral costs. Quote, "The outcome is not looking good. We need to prepare for the most unimaginable outcome, our baby boy's funeral. I don't have much else to say as my heart is breaking in a million pieces right now." The campaign eventually raised somewhere between about $5,200 and $5,350. On Sunday, February 5th, Landon was officially declared brain dead, and 2 days later, on Tuesday, February 7th, he died after being removed from life support. The Allegheny County Medical Examiner ruled his death as a homicide caused by blunt force trauma to his head, torso, and extremities. Dr. Michelle Clayton, a pediatric child abuse expert, said, quote, "The multitude of injuries could not be explained by his falling. There was an application of violent forces to his head." She described what Landon experienced as torture, quote, "Landon was subjected to torture. This was ongoing physical abuse, emotional abuse, and psychological abuse." As the investigation continued over the next several months, detectives interviewed the other 5 children who had been living in the home, and their accounts supported what investigators had already started learning about the way Landon had been treated. After the investigation was completed, Lauren and Jacob were arrested on Thursday, July 27th, 2023. Lauren was charged with first-degree murder, criminal homicide, 2 counts of aggravated assault, endangering the welfare of children, and conspiracy. Jacob was charged with criminal homicide, 2 counts of aggravated assault, endangering the welfare of children, and conspiracy. Unlike Lauren, he wasn't charged with first-degree murder. Both were held without bond, and their first scheduled court appearance was set for August 8th. Following the arrests, GoFundMe disabled the fundraiser. The company said that it had, quote, "zero tolerance for the misuse of our platform," promised to cover refund requests from donors, and confirmed that it was cooperating with law enforcement. District Attorney Nicole W. Ziccarelli also said her office was investigating the fundraiser as part of the larger case. During a press conference announcing the arrests, Attorney Ziccarelli said, quote, Tragically, Landon suffered abuse and trauma over the span of his short life. We intend to prosecute this case with the dignity and honor Landon deserves. His injuries caused substantial pain at the time they were inflicted, with impairment of function including inability to drink or eat and loss of consciousness. Delmont Police Chief T.J. Klobuchar said, quote, "In the 25 years I have been working for the Delmont Police Department, we have never faced an incident like this. To the family and friends of Sweet Landon, this is the first step towards justice. Our heart breaks for Landon and everyone who knew him, and for this tragedy that ultimately took his precious life at 5 years old." Lauren and Jacob's cases were eventually separated, and Lauren's trial started in Westmoreland County on May 5th, 2026. Over 9 days, jurors heard from more than 45 witnesses, including investigators, medical experts, relatives, Lauren's former co-workers, Landon's siblings, and Jacob. You heard that right. Assistant District Attorney Cassidy Hatton and Judy Petrush handled the prosecution. The state argued that Lauren had taken responsibility for Landon when she adopted him, but then singled him out for years of abuse. Attorney Hatton told the jury, quote, "Landon was isolated, mistreated, terrorized, and killed, not by a stranger, but by the person who was supposed to protect him. She took a sacred responsibility and chose to be a mother, then turned it into cruelty." Prosecutors went through the more than 100 injuries, more than 100 injuries found on Landon's body and explained that they were in different stages of healing, showing that they hadn't happened all at once. Medical experts also explained that his 3 brain bleeds, rotational head trauma, and the damage that shifted and obliterated his brain couldn't be explained by the fall Lauren had described. Quote, "There is no accidental explanation offered to explain his massive head trauma." This is what Attorney Petrush told the jury. The prosecution also focused on the amount of time Lauren and Jacob waited before getting Landon help, and doctors testified that the delay hurt his chances of surviving. Lauren's messages about beating Landon and threatening to kill him were also shown to the jury. According to prosecutors, those texts showed that the abuse had been happening for months and wasn't limited to one incident at the end of January. Landon's siblings testified about the way that he was treated inside the home, including the beatings, the spray bottle, the food deprivation, the toilet, and the way he was regularly separated from everyone else. And just to note that while Landon was the child being physically abused, the other 5 children weren't untouched by what happened inside that house. Even though they went upstairs during his beatings, they could still hear him crying, like I said before. They were privy to watching him getting treated differently. And with all of that, they learned that the adults responsible for taking care of them could choose one child and make that child the target of basically almost anything happening inside the house. Even if none of the other children suffered the same physical injuries, witnessing that kind of abuse can affect their mental health. So they might grow up struggling with guilt over not being able to help him. They might have struggled with fear that the same thing could have happened to them. And even though they're somewhere else, they might struggle with that same fear because, that's their mother and father that was doing this. So imagine now these are other people who actually didn't give birth to them. They might struggle and think that, they're going to choose their own children or whatever belongs to them over us. And they might struggle with that same fear. They also might struggle with confusion over why Landon was treated so differently, and that actually will contribute to their guilt too. So You got to remember, not saying that you don't remember, but just saying in the general sense, that they were children too, and it wasn't their responsibility to stop the abuse. However, they might still carry what they saw and heard for the rest of their lives in just different ways. You never know how it's going to manifest. That is so heartbreaking. On Monday, May 11th, Jacob testified for the prosecution against Lauren. He told the jury that just before his arrest, he believed Landon's condition had been caused by some type of medical problem. Quote, "When we went to court one time, she said she had something to tell me, but she couldn't say anything. I always thought it was medical." He claimed that he didn't learn what investigators believed had happened to Landon until after he was arrested. Quote, "I can't even wrap my head around that for a year. What I was told happened to our son didn't happen. The person I thought I was married to, I lost complete trust in." Lauren's defense attorney, Adam Gorzelewski, argued that the case wasn't as simple as the prosecution made it sound. Of course it's not. Quote, "The facts of this case are complicated. They are not straightforward by any means." He claimed that investigators decided Lauren was responsible and then stopped seriously considering any other explanation for Landon's injuries. Quote, "They do not know for certain what happened in that house because they basically stopped looking." The defense also argued that prosecutors were trying to turn evidence that Lauren had been impatient, angry, or unloving towards Landon into proof that she had murdered him. I mean, there was a text that said, "I'm going to kill him," so... Then, on Wednesday, May 13th, Lauren took the stand in her own defense, and you'll never guess, or maybe you will. She blamed Jacob for Landon's fatal injuries. How many times have we seen this happen? They come together and abuse the child, but when it comes to court, they're against each other. "I didn't know what happened. Oh, he was losing 13 pounds a day. I never saw that happening. Oh, no, he saw it happening. It was all his fault. He told me to do it. He even beat me into submission and made me do it." It's always the same story. So let's see how Lauren is going to blame Jacob for Landon. Lauren described Jacob as controlling. Didn't I tell you? That's like the first, 5 words of the next sentence. Didn't I tell you? She described Jacob as controlling and abusive and accused him of raping and emotionally controlling her during their marriage. Lauren said that she was afraid of him and claimed he stopped her from getting Landon medical care after she realized something was wrong. According to Lauren, Jacob took Landon into the bathroom on the morning of January 30th and locked the door behind him. She couldn't even get in the bathroom. Oh, it had nothing to do. He even locked the door behind. Oh, God. Quote, "I heard Landon screaming. He had a pretty significant mark on his face. Jacob was getting frustrated. He grabbed him by the upper forearm. Landon was crying." She claimed that she tried to help Landon once she understood how serious his condition had become. Quote, "I did what I could when I knew something was wrong." Yep, same story, different people. Lauren and Jacob just decided they're going to turn against each other to save their own butts. While Landon was alive, they lived in the same house, exchanged messages about him, controlled where he slept, and were both there while he was being treated differently from the other children. Don't forget, while we're listening to Jacob's account of the story, don't forget that he removed the camera while Landon was in the hospital. But once, they were arrested and now facing serious prison time, each of them tries to make each other look like the one who was responsible. Neither one of them knew anything was happening. Jacob is saying that he thought Landon had a medical problem and claimed he didn't understand what had happened until much later after he was arrested. But how do you live inside that house and not notice that one child is sleeping on the floor? How do you live inside that house and notice that, or not notice that being watched through a camera was not something that was normal and you're only watching that one kid? How do you live inside that house and didn't notice that Landon was searching for food at night? And how did you live in that house and you didn't notice that he was being treated differently from everyone else? Even though everybody else, maybe they didn't say anything to CPS, to the police, so many other people came forward and said, oh yeah, I saw that he was being treated differently. And you lived in the house and you didn't see that? So how did you hear or see any part of that and then open your stank mouth to say that you thought everything was okay, except you thought something medical really quickly happened? And then here goes Lauren accusing Jacob of being controlling, abusive, and of raping her. And those are very, very serious allegations. And it's possible for someone to experience abuse while also abusing someone else. So it's a possibility this could be happening. Personally, and I know there's some people who's going to jump on me for this. Personally, I don't believe that was happening. But if it was happening, it is a possibility for someone to be abused themselves and then they turn around and abuse someone else. But even if everything she said about Jacob was true, it wouldn't excuse what she did to Landon or explain the messages where she admitted beating him and said she was going to kill him. So you can say everything you want, but you contributed to it and there's no excuse for that. So yeah, basically I just was going on that rant because it gets on my nerves, when Landon's being abused, they're united front apparently against Landon or whatever. But once they have to answer for his death, suddenly that unity disappeared. Suddenly each one wants the jury to believe that the other one was the real abuser. Like, seriously? And, I hope the jury paid attention to all of the evidence because none of the evidence points to what either Lauren or Jacob are saying. Attorney Gorleski argued that Lauren never should have been charged with first-degree murder because the evidence didn't show that she had formed a specific plan to kill Landon. The defense asked the jury to consider involuntary manslaughter instead. Attorney Gorleski argued that prosecutors couldn't prove exactly who caused each injury or what happened inside the home when Landon suffered the final trauma. I mean, yeah, as a defense, you need to point out how many injuries. You can say, yeah, you don't know exactly who caused each of the or some of the more than 100. You didn't want to say that, did you? More than 100 injuries in different forms of healing. You skipped over that part. The prosecution, however, maintained that this wasn't one careless mistake. They argued that the injuries, messages, witness statements, and delay in getting medical treatment showed a long pattern of deliberate abuse. After both sides finished presenting their cases, the jury began deliberating. And on Thursday, May 14th, 2026, after about 3 hours, the jurors returned with their verdict. Lauren was found not guilty of first-degree murder, which meant that she avoided a mandatory sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. However, she was found guilty of third-degree murder, 2 counts of aggravated assault, endangering the welfare of children, and conspiracy. Following the verdict, Attorney Ziccarelli said, quote, "Landon deserves a justice, and I believe we accomplished that today." Attorney Gorleski acknowledged that the defense had hoped the jury would reach a different decision, saying, quote, "We certainly were hoping for a little bit better. I think the way I argued it, and I think what was appropriate, we were probably hoping for an involuntary manslaughter." Lauren now faces a maximum possible sentence of 80 years in prison, and, as of this recording, she hasn't been sentenced yet, and her attorney said the defense planned to appeal the verdict. Jacob's case was still being handled separately. He remained charged with criminal homicide, 2 counts of aggravated assault, endangering the welfare of children, and conspiracy. His disposition hearing was scheduled for May 22nd, 2026, and he was expected to stand trial at a later date. Even though Jacob testified against Lauren and claimed that he believed Landon's condition was caused by a medical problem, prosecutors were still pursuing charges against him for his own role in Landon's abuse and death. And I have to say, for his side, it's alleged because, his case is still ongoing. The 5 other children remain safe and out of Lauren and Jacob's custody. Attorney Ziccarelli later confirmed that they were safe, but she didn't release their location because she wanted to protect their privacy. And I want you to remember that, I know you listened to this entire case and everything like that, but at the heart of it, Landon was only 5 years old when he died in a home that he was adopted into, a place he should have felt safe. Instead, he was treated differently from these other children. He was cut off from people who cared about him, and he was left without medical help after suffering catastrophic injuries. And that is the case of the murder of Landon Eldenberger. And yes, I used his name, not the name of his murderous adoptive parents. What are your thoughts on this case? I keep asking myself personally why Lauren even adopted Landon if she didn't want to take care of him, Adoption is supposed to give a child safety, stability, and a permanent family. Landon, if you forgot, had already experienced mistreatment before Lauren even took him in, and he was only 2 months old, and some other people were already mistreating him. Then, when she officially adopted him, she was basically making a commitment to protect him and raise him as her own child. But instead, she acted like somebody forced him on her and that she didn't want him around. Nobody forced you to take him. You took him. Now, I don't believe adoptive parents should casually return children, as, some of the cases that we've seen. They should not return children when they feel like parenting is too hard. Adoption is a serious commitment, and a child shouldn't be made to feel like they're disposable. But, or as I hear some people say that I like, however, I would rather someone admit that they can't safely care for a child, or they just don't want to, as in this case. It wasn't a can't, they didn't want to. And for them to ask for help rather than keep this child and abuse them, humiliate them, and ultimately kill them. So in this instance, as with some other instances, but in this instance, returning this child would have actually been a better option. However, maybe not, because this little baby was abused since he was 2 months. So was he going to continue getting abused? You know what I'm saying? Even if he went back, was he going to continue getting abused, maybe even worse, and still killed? You'll never know. Either way, there's a 50-50 chance that wouldn't have happened, and she should have returned him. If she didn't want him, she felt like, I don't know, I can't get over that bull crap comment she made that he's not showing her enough affection, as if he's the one who brought her into his life and into his atmosphere, and he was the adult. You know what I'm saying? When you made that comment, when you felt like that, like you're fucking too, but when you felt like that, you should have just taken him back and say, look, I can't handle this. He's not showing me enough affection, so I don't want him. You should have taken him back. Now, if that option is out of the question, there were still other people available. Lauren could have asked relatives for help. She could have looked for professional support. She could have told someone that she felt overwhelmed or he wasn't showing me enough affection. And yeah, if she truly couldn't care for him without hurting him, then she could have allowed someone else to take responsibility for him. Almost anything would have been better than continuing to punish a 5-year-old for not, quote, behaving or, quote, loving her in the way that she expected another child to love her, even her own children. What if your own children didn't love you in the way you thought they should? You had this picture in your head and they didn't do it. Would you abuse them? You know what I'm saying? Like, what kind of narcissistic crap is that? And I also, I'm riding my high horse now. If you can't hear him in the background, he's clopping around. I'm riding my high horse right now. I can't get past the people around this family who noticed the warning signs. They saw him being isolated during their visits. They heard Lauren talking crazy about him. And even former coworkers heard Lauren saying she hated him. Imagine saying that at work. That's how comfortable she was with that. That's how much she didn't like this little boy. She said this around her coworkers, and they heard her say she hated him. Again, I do want to point out that we don't know exactly what each person knew or whether anyone tried to report their concerns. So I do want to point that out. But how many warning signs does someone have to see before they stop assuming everything is fine? That's my question. And I will stand on this hill and die on this hill that I will never forgive people who see abuse happening to a child and just, say something like, well, I'm not going back there because I don't want to see what's happening, And then when the 2020 investigative report comes out, they're like, we thought something was happening inside that house. Then there's Jacob. He testified that he believed Landon's condition was medical, and he opened his mouth to say, I lost trust in Lauren. But he lived in that house too. He got that message where Lauren said, quote, I just got done beating your son. But now when it's time to testify, he acted as though he's been completely deceived. Oh, really? And then Lauren, of course, did the same thing in the other direction. So, and I also think about the GoFundMe. While Landon was still on life support, Lauren and Jacob were already asking strangers to help them pay for attorneys because they knew what was coming. Just a bunch of diabolical douchebags. So that's my thoughts on it. You heard my thoughts. Now I want to know what you think. Leave your comments below. And if you'd like even more Love and Murder, you want to hear more of my ranting, head on over to the Patreon, patreon.com/Love and Murder. You'll get bonus episodes that, you won't hear anywhere else, in the sense of you're not going to hear my ranting. You're not going to hear my brand of calling these people out on their bullshit other than in my Patreon. You'll get ad-free listening, intro-free listening, exclusive content, and early access to select episodes. We have some new things coming out at the end of the year. So if you want to be part of it before the public, is going to be a month in advance, then join the Patreon at one of the paid tiers. If you want to be part of that, patreon.com/Love and Murder. You get all of this while helping support the podcast and ensuring more victim stories continue to be told. Patreon.com/Love and Murder. And before you go, if this episode moved you, resonated with you, or if you know someone who cares about child advocacy or follows true crime, then please share this episode with them. Whether it's sending a text, sharing it on social media, or recommending Love and Murder to another true crime fan, every share helps this podcast grow and helps ensure victims like Landon are never forgotten. So share. And with that, let us close out this episode. I want to remind you that it's, say it with me now, all love and no murder, y'all. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much for joining me. If you joined the Patreon, whether at the free tier or one of our Lamb Fam tiers, thank you so much for your support. If you listen to this episode as part of the free public, thank you for your support as well. And I will see you in the next episode. Bye.